everyone, I'm Little Liz and welcome back to my channel. We're into week 4 of our 52-week mindfulness challenge, so we've almost done a whole month of practice together, so be sure to let me know in the comments what your favourite practice has been so far. This week's episode is a little bit different. We've got 3 sections, the first being how mindfulness can be used for change, the second being trauma in the brain, some symptoms of trauma, and staying connected with ourselves, and the third section being our mindful practice from the jar. This is because this episode is in dedication to George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and all Black lives, those that have been lost at the hands of racism and those still suffering from it as they have been for generations. I felt as a creator contributing to the public sphere that this week I needed to create content that kept the focus on justice for Black lives, this much needed focus, but at the same time I wanted to make sure that what I'm releasing is relevant and useful if I'm going to contribute to this. So let's get right into it. We're going to start by talking about how mindfulness isn't just what you think it is, and that it's something that can be used for change. And that's how Zinn starts his Mindfulness for All. It's subtitled The Wisdom to Transform the World, and that's exactly what we can do with it. In our practice together, we've already started to learn how to cultivate kindness, awareness, wisdom, compassion within ourselves and for our own lives. We've learnt to be aware and notice the things around us, notice our thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, the things outside our window, directly in our environment. We might have acknowledged these things and let them pass without judgment, and in that way we show the kindness and compassion that is part of mindful practice to ourselves. So mindfulness for change is about extending this practice outside ourselves. We're going to use this awareness cultivated around our own selves and zoom out and see the bigger picture. Be aware of others' experience that might not come into our own. Show that kindness and compassion and wisdom and non-judgment towards it. This is not saying that if everyone on the planet started practicing mindfulness and noticing their thoughts that everything would be completely fine. But what it is saying is we can approach injustice with this awareness and say, just because I'm not experiencing it doesn't mean I can't be aware of it. Mindfulness can teach us how to use that awareness that we've built to function for change, even when we might not understand or experience the injustice felt by another. Throughout this book, Kabat talks about how an using and theming can take place, whether that's socially or politically, and there's many different ways that functions, which he talks about in the book, but one of those ways is dismissing the problems of them when they don't happen to us. We can often become self-righteous in our own belief systems, in our opinions, and believe that our own perspective is the best source all too often, without attempting to understand the perspective of another. For example, for white people, this is exercising our privilege because we're able to exercise choice in things that don't affect us directly. The mindful awareness that we've begun to cultivate together throws this out the window and says that we have been called to learn from others, to listen, to be aware, to extend this awareness, this kindness, this compassion, this wisdom. One of my favourite quotes from Kabat is, "Remember, when one mind changes, the entire lattice structure of the universe changes in a small way." Small, yes. Insignificant, hardly. We can all be activists for change. We can all be actively anti-racist. If you're here watching this video, if you've been taking part in the series, you've already started to cultivate that mindfulness within yourself, that awareness, that kindness, that compassion, that wisdom that we are about to extend, that we need to extend to others. As Ijeoma Oluo said, you don't have to be free of racism to be anti-racist. Anti-racism is a commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including within yourself. Being aware of what goes on inside of us and practicing anti-racism here can then be extended with this awareness to practice it elsewhere as well. Acknowledging our need for re-education and fighting that racism that we even find within ourselves, we can start to contribute to that significant change in the lattice structure of the universe, as Kabat says. Kabat also talks about not becoming self-righteous in contributing to change, and that's especially important here. When there is room to scout out racism even within ourselves and become more actively anti-racist, then we are in no place to ever become self-righteous. At this point, we are just doing the bare minimum for Black lives in being anti-racist. It says here, on a daily basis, the news stream is likely to stimulate huge anxiety and insecurity in us, as well as anger and resentment. So John Kabat-Zinn encourages us to have a mindful approach when we feel this way, to stop and say, okay, where are my thoughts? Where are my emotions and why? Am I being triggered? Is this emotion useful to me? Can it be used for change? We need to feel anger from what's on our news stream. In the cases of all the injustice against black people, then most certainly we do need to feel anger, and this anger can stimulate change. However, there's a difference between that anger that exhausts us and drains us, and then there's an anger that can be used to fight, to push, to create justice. So mindful awareness can help us to navigate this within ourselves. This consideration of the news stream brings us into part 2 about trauma and the brain. Being constantly fed traumatic news in the news stream, especially when you're part of the black community and that's part of your lived experience, can be extremely triggering. There needs to be space for recovery and for healing, as well as for impact and for change. Injustice against black people is not just an individual traumatic event, but repeatedly happens and is part of a daily lived experience. Victims of any trauma might experience some of the following symptoms: feelings of shame, to have flashbacks, to experience nightmares, to feel hypervigilant, hyper-aware, on edge or overwhelmed, or even the opposite and feel numb and underwhelmed and zoned out and unable to connect. Everyone's individual experience of trauma will be different and how that manifests itself, but it can be important to acknowledge shared symptoms in order to say to yourself, this is valid and this is normal to feel this way. And as Jermaine Williams said after the murder of George Floyd, it's okay to say, I am not okay today. If you feel shame in relation to these symptoms of trauma, it might be that these manifest themselves in a mind bully, in an internal judgment of ourselves, like a second voice that watches over the way we respond. Acute stress from trauma, from psychological stress, can physically cause these sensations and these symptoms as a result of our limbic system, the part of our brain that controls emotions, monitors danger, monitors threat, send in faster signals to our amygdala in order to create a faster response. So though this is a very basic understanding of the science of the brain and how this works, hopefully having an awareness that the way our body responds to trauma is its way of protecting itself will help you to approach your own emotions with gentle kindness and compassion, and acknowledge that all these feelings are valid. So now we move into our mindful practice for the week to see what the jar has in store for us. So this week is to observe your thoughts. Our little sheet tells us, with our thoughts we have choice to keep them and name them, or let them flow on while we simply enjoy the moment. So now as we get into our practice, take a comfy seat or lie down. I'll be lying down with you for this practice. Part 1 is to get into a comfy seat or lie down. Might help you to relax if you take a deep belly breath. And as you breathe out, allow your back and shoulders to sink either into the ground or the back of your chair. Start by letting go of your day and bringing your awareness to your breath. How this moves round the body and how the body feels as you take deep breaths. Notice the breath as it draws in through the nose and up, fills the lungs, and the motion of your belly as you breathe in and out, and it fills and empties. Move your attention to your thoughts. Imagine them as passing clouds across your vision, moving peacefully. Do your clouds change shape, change form? What colour are they? Can you imagine how they might feel? Let them pass by and move with ease. If you find yourself chasing a particular thought, acknowledge it and let it pass by moving your focus back to your breath. Don't try to force this thought away, but watch it move without judgment. Maybe you place this thought on a cloud that drifts far away. Or maybe the cloud is so heavy it rains it out and you can no longer see it. Or maybe it just rests. Keep letting the clouds pass by and keep on breathing. Now repeat after me. I am worthy. I am valued. And I always deserve the best treatment. Thanks for sharing in these mindful moments today, guys. I hope discussing trauma and the brain briefly, mindfulness for change, and this practice are useful to you throughout this week and beyond. In the description, there's lots of information and links this week, so be sure to check it out. There's links to support services for the BAME community, and some of these are local to Cardiff. There's links to petitions, and there's links to posts and books that are useful in our re-education about racism and how to be more actively anti-racist. Remember, most importantly, guys, to switch off to switch on within yourselves. Like, share and subscribe as always, and I'll see you next week, guys. Thank you.